A man in a dark coat sits in a London museum, gas lamps low. He holds two pieces of broken clay that fit together. He brings them to the light. He reads in a language no one else can place. This is the story of the civilization the world had to learn to read again. A woman in her 40s sits on a thick wool rug in a temple in Ur. She is the daughter of a king. Wind moves through the high windows, lifting fine dust into the slant of light. A young scribe sits across from her with a tablet of wet clay. She dictates the first sentence of her work. I, Enheduanna. It is the year 2280 BC. An old astronomer sits in a small inner room of the temple of Anu in the city of Uruk. A sesame oil lamp burns low. His hands tremble slightly as he presses a reed stylus into clay, writing a planetary almanac for the coming year. He does not know it, but he is the last person in the world who can still do this. It is the year 75 AD. A man in a dark coat sits in a museum room in London, late autumn, gas lamps low. He has been working since dawn, sorting broken pieces of clay sent from a hillside in northern Iraq. He has just realized that two pieces fit together. He brings them to the light. He reads, slowly, in a language no one else in the room can place. It is November 1872. 4,150 years separate the woman in Ur from the man in London. 3,000 years separate the old astronomer from both. The land between them is the same, the floodplain between the Tigris and the Euphrates. The civilization is the same, Sumer, Ki-en-gir, in its own language, the land of the civilized lords. Sumer invented the city. Sumer invented writing. Sumer invented written law, the calendar, the school, the named author, the lament for a fallen city. And then Sumer was forgotten completely for 3,500 years. How does that happen? How does a civilization that wrote everything down end up unread? And who decides, 4,000 years later, with no permission and no clear reason, to learn the writing back from the beginning? This is the story of the longest forgetting in recorded history, and of the small, improbable thread that brought it back. A man kneels in the wet earth at the edge of a barley field, before the sun has fully cleared the horizon. He is holding a wooden lock gate the height of his knee. The water of an irrigation channel is pressing against the gate from the other side, silt-heavy, the color of old terracotta, and he braces his shoulder against the wood as he lifts the pin out. The water comes through fast. It runs across his bare leg, warm at the top, cool underneath, and spreads in fingers into the dry furrows. The sun is already strong. It is not yet 7 in the morning, and the air smells of damp clay, of yesterday's cooking fire going out, of the salt that comes up through the soil after a hot night. This is the floodplain between two rivers, the river the Greeks will later call the Tigris, the river the Greeks will later call the Euphrates. Sumerian for now is not yet a written language. It has not even been written for the first time. The man at the gate does not call this region by any name we would recognize. Later, when there is writing, it will be called Ki-en-gir, the land of the civilized lords. He cannot grow this barley without the river, and he cannot move the river without help. There are no rains here that can carry a crop. There is no stone in the soil, and almost no usable timber. There is only clay and water, and the work of opening and closing the gates at the right hour. 20 men down the canal are doing the same thing he is doing at gates they did not build alone. Above all of them, somewhere in the temple that is rising on the horizon, is the man who decides when the gates open. No one alive knows where these people came from, not even themselves. The language they speak does not belong to any family the later world will know. It is not Semitic like Akkadian. It is not Indo-European like Persian. It is not anything. The question of where they came from has stayed open for 6,000 years. A priest is walking up the side of a low platform of mud brick, his bare feet finding the worn edges of each course. He carries a single brick in his hands. It is heavy and damp and smells of straw and river silt. The sun is going down at his back. He can hear the reeds in the marshes below the platform and, beyond that, the sound of small waves. Because the platform is built almost at the edge of the gulf and the salt water comes nearly to the foot of it. This is Eridu. The platform he is climbing will be added to, year after year, by other priests carrying other bricks, until it becomes a stepped tower of mud brick rising over the marsh. 5,000 years from this evening, in the year 1946, an Iraqi archaeologist named Fuad Safar will dig down through 18 layers of temple and find this brick. The priest reaches the top of the platform and sets the brick into its place in the wet line of mortar. He is laying the foundation of the house of Enki, the god of fresh water, of the deep, of wisdom. He does not know the word city. There is no word for it yet. But what he is helping to build is the first one. 1,000 years from this evening, a scribe in Sumer will write down a tradition that is already old. After kingship had descended from heaven, kingship was in Eridu. The Sumerian king list opens with that line. It will be copied for centuries on many tablets. The best preserved version is a clay prism from around 1800 BC, now in Oxford. What it claims is simple. Civilization began here. The first king reigned in this small temple town on the Gulf. The rest is consequence. It is also probably not true, but it tells you what Sumer thought about itself, that someone long ago had brought down from the sky the idea of being ruled, that the world had not always been arranged this way, that before kingship there had only been the marshes, the reeds, the water, the god under the water. The priest places the next brick. The first star comes out over the platform. A man in his 50s sits on a low stool in a courtyard of the Enheduanna precinct in Uruk. The sun is in his face. A donkey caravan has just arrived from a temple estate 3 days' walk to the north, and the foreman of the caravan is standing in front of him, sweating, waiting. The administrator has a problem he has had 100 times. He needs to record what was delivered. The old way is to take marked tokens, a clay cone for each measure of grain, a clay sphere for each larger measure, and seal them inside a hollow ball of clay with the foreman's mark pressed on the outside. The ball is the receipt. To check, they break it open and count the tokens. He has done this all his life. Today, for some reason, he tries something else. He takes a small, flat slab of wet clay. He pushes the end of a cut reed into it twice, tack, to mean 2 large measures. Then, with the sharpened end, he draws the picture of an ear of barley. Then he draws a stroke for each of the next number, then a picture of a bull, then a stroke for the number of bulls. When he is done, the receipt lies in his palm. It does not rattle. It does not need to be broken to be read. It can be set on a shelf. It can be checked at a glance. He has just invented something. Neither he nor anyone else knows it yet. The thing he has invented does not even have a name. 5,000 years later, modern scholars will call it Proto-Cuneiform, and his city, Uruk, on the lower Euphrates, they will call the first real city in the world. It is not the first writing in the world. In the Nile Valley, at almost exactly the same moment, hieroglyphs are beginning to appear on small ivory tags. The two systems seem to be independent inventions. There may have been others, lost, but what the Sangha of the Enheduanna has done this evening will outlive every other early script. 5,000 years from now, it will be sitting in a basement in London, waiting to be read. A man in his 20s stands at the foot of a stepped tower in the heart of Uruk. He has walked for 4 days. His feet hurt. He is one of perhaps 3,000 people pressed into the square at the base of the Enheduanna precinct on the first evening of the new year. The tower above him rises in 3 terraces of mud brick faced with glazed clay. At the very top, where the small white shrine sits, oil lamps are burning in the 4 corners. The man cannot see them clearly. He can see only the orange points against the deepening blue of the sky. Drums are beating, low and steady, somewhere at the base of the platform. Around him, the smell of cedar smoke and myrrh thickens as the priests at the top swing braziers. The crowd is not quiet. There is a kind of low murmur that swells whenever the drums change rhythm. The shrine at the top belongs to Inanna. She is not the goddess that the later world will picture when it thinks of female deity. She is not gentle. She is not maternal. She is the goddess of sexual love and of war, both at once. The Sumerians give her a title, Lady of the 100 Offices. She runs everything that matters. It is the festival of Akitu, the new year. For 12 days, the city stops being a city of work and becomes a city of ritual. The king will be tested in front of the gods. He will be struck on the cheek by the high priest, made to swear he has not abused his power. Only then will Inanna grant him another year. The pilgrim does not see any of this. He sees the lamps at the top of the tower and the dark shape of the goddess's house against the first stars. He has come because his mother told him to come. Every man in his village comes once before he marries. The drums stop. There is a single voice from somewhere on the tower, very high, almost a chant. The man cannot understand the words. He does not need to. He is in the right place, on the right night, in the right city. That is enough. A woman in her 40s sits on a thick wool rug in a high room of the Temple of Nana in Ur. The wind comes through the high windows and lifts fine dust into the slanted bars of late afternoon light. She wears the pleated wool of a Sumerian priestess, Kaunakas, and her hair is braided in a heavy coil around her head. She is the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, the first conqueror of these lands, but Akkadian is not the language she will speak this afternoon. A young scribe sits on a mat before her with a fresh tablet of wet clay across his knees and a reed stylus in his right hand. He is waiting. She begins. She speaks in Sumerian, the older language, the liturgical language of the temple. He writes, "Lady of all the divine powers, resplendent light, righteous woman clothed in radiance, beloved of An and Urush." The hymn is to Inanna. It will be one of 42 she composes for the temples of Sumer, and the longest of them, Nin-Meshara, will tell, in the first person, the story of her own exile and return. 200 lines in, she will dictate a sentence that has never been said before in the history of human writing. I, Enheduanna, will recite a prayer to you. I, Enheduanna, I will recite. It is the first surviving I in literature, the first time anyone, anywhere, on any tablet, papyrus, bone, or stone, has signed their own name to what they were writing. She is the daughter of an emperor and the high priestess of the moon god at Ur, and she has just done something her father did not do, and that no king before her father did. She has put her name inside the work. She does not know she is the first. She thinks of it as a small claim. These words are mine, but the claim will outlive everything else she ever does. 4,150 years from this afternoon, in a room in London, someone she could never have imagined will read this line aloud. The wind comes through the high windows. The dust dances in the light. The reed stylus presses into the clay. Tack, tack, tack. "3,500 years have passed since the woman in the temple at Ur dictated her name. 2,000 years have passed since the old astronomer in Uruk set down his last almanac. The wedges are still in the clay. The clay is still in the ground, but no one alive can read them. Sumer is not gone exactly. It is buried. Each of its cities sits under a mound of its own ruined mud brick. Tells, the Arabic word that future archaeologists will use. And from a distance, the tells look like low hills. Shepherds in the Ottoman Empire of the 1800s will walk over them every spring without knowing what is beneath their feet. Here is the question the second half of this story will answer. Once the last person who can read a script is gone, can anyone ever learn to read it again? The first man to try in earnest is hanging by a thin rope on a cliff face in the western mountains of Persia, copying signs he does not yet understand. It is 1838. He is 28 years old. The wind is strong. The rope is fraying against the rock. A man in his 50s stands in the courtyard of the palace at Ur late in the afternoon. He is the king. He carries a long polished staff of ebony, and he holds it very still, with the foot of it resting on the courtyard tile, while he watches two craftsmen work. The craftsmen are bent over a slab of dark diorite, the height of a man and the width of a forearm. The stone has been quarried hundreds of miles to the south, in the mountains beyond the Persian Gulf, and dragged here by river. It is still warm from the sun of the day. The first of the men is a scribe. He has just transferred the text, line by line, into the stone with chalk. The second is a stone cutter with a bronze chisel and a wooden mallet. He is following the chalk. The sound is metallic and dry. Tink, 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 and the dust that comes off the stone is so fine that it hangs in the light at chest height. The king's name is Ur-Nammu. He has founded what later historians will call the third dynasty of Ur. It will last a little over 100 years, and during that century, the state he has built will be the most tightly administered yet seen. Every herd of cattle will be counted. Every quantity of barley issued by every temple will be logged on clay. Couriers with sealed tablets will run between cities on a calendar of fixed days. What is being cut into the diorite this afternoon is a code of laws. I, Ur-Nammu, mighty warrior, king of Ur, king of Sumer and Akkad. It is the oldest legal code that substantially survives. It precedes Hammurabi by 3 centuries. His son, Shulgi, is 12 years old this year. He will reform the calendar. He will deify himself while still alive. And he will preside over a state so heavily documented that 4,000 years later, archaeologists will excavate sealed jars of tax receipts from his reign and complain that there are too many to translate. The stonecutter pauses. He wipes the dust from a fresh line with his palm. The king does not move. The chisel goes back to the stone. A man sits on a fallen brick in what was the courtyard of the temple of Nana in Ur. It is a January morning. The wind comes through the empty doorways without finding a wall to stop it. The brick is cold. It smells faintly of smoke, a year after the fires. He is a scribe. His hands are cracked at the knuckles from the cold. In his lap, he has a fresh tablet of wet clay and a reed stylus, and he is composing. He is not copying. There is no older version to copy. He is writing, this winter morning, the words that will later be called the Lament for Ur. He begins with the goddess of the city, Enheduanna, whose temple is now black with soot, abandoning her own house. Its lady cries, "Alas for my city," cries, "Alas for my house." What happened to Ur a year ago is what happens to many cities. A weakened dynasty, a bad harvest, an Elamite king from the highlands to the east who saw the chance. He came. The walls did not hold. The last king of Ur, Ibisin, was taken alive and led away to Elam in chains. The city was given over to the soldiers. The temple of Nana was burned. The libraries were not destroyed on purpose. The Elamites had no quarrel with clay. But many tablets cracked in the heat, and the rest lay in rubble. The scribe writes for days. There are other men in other cities, Uruk, Eridu, Nippur, doing the same. A new literary form is being invented this winter by men with cold hands in broken courtyards. Scholars will later call them the city laments, the oldest poetry of national trauma we have. The scribe does not see what else is ending. Sumerian, the language he is writing in, is no longer the language of the street. Akkadian has replaced it for 2 centuries. In 200 years, no one will speak Sumerian as a mother tongue. It will become a school language, a liturgical language, a language of the dead. The scribe presses the stylus into the clay. Alas for my city. The wind comes through the empty doorway again. There is no one in the street to hear it. An old man sits in a small inner room of the temple of Anu in the city of Uruk. He is in his 70s. The room is cold. The lamp on the low table beside him burns sesame oil, and its light is the only light in the room. He is writing on a small clay tablet. His left hand holds the tablet steady. His right hand holds a reed stylus, and the hand trembles slightly. He stops every few signs to wait for the tremor to pass. The tablet is an astronomical almanac. It lists the predicted positions of the planets, Jupiter, Venus, Mars, for the year ahead. It is the kind of text he has copied or composed perhaps 200 times in his life. He learned the system from his father. His father learned it from a teacher in this same temple. The year in the Seleucid calendar, still used by the temple, is 385. By the Roman calendar of the empire that now governs everything around this city, it is 74 or 75 AD. Outside the temple, the streets of Uruk speak Aramaic and Greek. They do not speak Akkadian. They certainly do not speak Sumerian. The cuneiform system, the wedges, the reed stylus, the wet clay tablet, has been in continuous use for about 3,200 years. It has carried Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Hittite, Elamite, Persian. There has never been an unbroken script in the world that lasted so long. It is ending tonight, in this room, in this man's right hand. He does not know this. He thinks he is doing what his father did, and what his father's father did before that. He finishes the line. He smooths a small ridge of clay at the edge with his thumb. He sets the tablet aside, on a shelf beside other tablets, to dry. 2,000 years from this night, archaeologists will find the shelf. They will catalog the tablet in the British Museum as BM 40083. It will be the last cuneiform tablet on Earth with a date on it. No tablet written later has ever been found. The lamp burns lower. The old man does not stand up yet. He looks at the wall. A man is hanging in the air on the side of a yellow limestone cliff in the western mountains of Persia. The rope is around his waist and across his chest. He is wearing a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a dark waistcoat with a pocketbook and a sharpened pencil. Sweat on the back of his neck. His name is Henry Creswick Rawlinson. He is 28 years old. He is an officer of the East India Company on loan to the Shah of Persia. And he is the best self-taught reader of dead scripts in the British Empire. Above his head, 2 Kurdish men from the village of Bisotun hold the rope. He has not learned their names. He calls them only the men in his notes. He has trusted his life to them every spring for 3 years. The rock face in front of his nose carries an inscription. It was carved here in around 520 BC by order of Darius the Great, king of Persia, on his return from war. He had it cut at this height so that no one could chisel it away. He did not, perhaps, anticipate that someone would also need to read it. The inscription says the same thing 3 times, once in Old Persian, once in Elamite, once in Babylonian cuneiform. One message. The whole point of the cliff is that it is a key. Rawlinson can read the Old Persian. A German schoolteacher, Georg Grotefend, had cracked enough of it from copies in 1802. The Babylonian is the prize, the same script in which most of the tablets sitting in the British Museum are written. He copies in pieces, hanging in the wind, lowering himself line by line. He goes back the next spring. He goes back the year after that, 12 years in stages. In 1847, a Kurdish boy, slim enough to descend on a thinner rope, finally lets him reach the Elamite face. In 1857, the Royal Asiatic Society holds a test. They hand the same unpublished Akkadian text, sealed in an envelope, to 4 scholars independently. Rawlinson, Edward Hincks, an Irish clergyman, Jules Oppert, a French philologist, William Henry Fox Talbot, the photographer. The 4 translations come back. They agree. Cuneiform has been broken. A man in a dark coat sits at a long wooden table on the 2nd floor of the British Museum. Gas lamps are lit at both ends of the table, even in afternoon light. The light outside is the low blue-gray of a London November. In front of him, broken pieces of clay, hundreds. They were sent from the mound of Kuyunjik, the ruined palace of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, by an Iraqi excavator named Hormuzd Rassam. They have been in this museum's basement since 1853. Almost no one has looked at them. The man's name is George Smith. He is 32. He was apprenticed at 14 to a London printing firm and learned to engrave banknotes. He has no university degree. He taught himself Akkadian on his lunch breaks at the museum. In 1867, the museum hired him as an assistant in the Department of Egyptian and Assyrian Antiquities. By 1872, he is the 2nd best reader of cuneiform in the world. He has been at the table since breakfast. He has been doing what he has done for 5 years, turning fragments over, comparing breaks, finding pieces that fit. It is patient work. It looks like nothing. Sometime in mid-November, the exact day is not recorded, he picks up 2 small fragments and notices that the broken edges align. He fits them together. He brings them to the lamp. He reads in a low voice in Akkadian. No one else looks up. He stops. He looks at the line again. He reads it once more. What he is holding is part of the 11th tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh, catalogued here as K.3375. It was baked in the fires that destroyed Nineveh in 612 BC, which is why it has lasted. The tablet describes a A man named Utnapishtim is warned by a god to build a boat. He fills it with his family and the animals. The rain comes for 6 days. The boat comes to rest on a mountain. He sends out a dove. It returns. He sends out a swallow. It returns. He sends out a raven. It does not. This is from before the Hebrew Bible. The story is older in this form than Genesis by at least 1,000 years. He stands up. He walks to the window and back. A younger colleague named Wallace Budge, hearing the story years later, recorded that Smith began to undress in his excitement, to the great astonishment of those present. The detail may be embellished. The line Budge attributes to him has stayed in the record. I am the first man to read this after more than 2,000 years of oblivion. He is. He is also the first to read, in any language, the words of a Sumerian woman whose name he does not yet know. 4,150 years ago, in a temple in Ur, she had a scribe write down her name. The clay survived. The reading is happening now. The gas lamps chuckle on. The London afternoon goes on outside. Smith sits back down. George Smith stands at a wooden lectern in a hall on Burlington House in Piccadilly on the evening of December 3, 1872. The chandeliers above him burn gas. The light is yellow and unsteady. The hall is full. He is reading aloud from handwritten pages his translation of the 11th tablet of Gilgamesh. He reads in a flat working-class voice. He does not perform. In the front row sits William Ewart Gladstone, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and a serious reader of Homer. He has come because he was told he should. Smith reaches the passage of the dove. The hall goes silent. When he is done, there is a kind of held breath. Then the room understands. Some in the audience are clergymen. They sit very still. The story of Noah, the dove, the raven, the boat on the mountain, was being told in Babylonian cuneiform 1,000 years before Genesis was written down. The next morning, the Daily Telegraph runs the story across 2 columns. Within a week, the paper has offered £1,000 to send Smith back to Nineveh to find the missing fragments of the tablet. He goes. Astonishingly, in May of 1873, in the mound of Kuyunjik, he finds more fragments of the same tablet. He comes home in triumph. He goes back again in 1874 and again in 1876. Each time he brings more tablets back. The framing matters. The 11th tablet does not, as some later sensationalists would say, expose the Hebrew Bible. It shows something quieter and more interesting. The story of a great flood, of a warned righteous man, of a boat and a bird sent out, was a shared Mesopotamian tradition. Older versions are preserved in the Akkadian poem of Atra Hasis, older still in fragmentary Sumerian texts. The Hebrew authors of Genesis did not copy. They were, like everyone in that part of the world, downstream of an enormous river of older story. The waters were always older than the boat. A man stands at the rim of an open pit on the floor of a dry plain south of Baghdad. The pit is 4.5 meters deep. The sun is fierce. It is March of 1928, and the heat is already over 30 degrees by mid-morning. His name is Leonard Woolley. He is 48. He has been digging at Ur on a joint expedition between the British Museum and the University of Pennsylvania for 7 seasons. At the bottom of the pit, in the soft brown earth, a man named Hammurabi ibn Sheikh Ibrahim is on his knees with a soft brush. Hammurabi is the foreman of the dig, a Syrian Arab who had worked with Woolley since their first dig at Carchemish in 1912. The men under him are local Arabs and Kurds. They have learned under Hammurabi to work with a brush instead of a pick when the ground starts to give back what is in it. What the ground is giving back this morning is a lyre. The wooden body has rotted away over 4,500 years, but its decoration has not. The face of the lyre is a bull's head in beaten gold. The eyes are inlaid lapis lazuli. The beard is more lapis. The horns are gold. It has not been seen by human eyes since the queen named Puabi was lowered into this earth around 2500 BC, with 73 attendants, jewelry, weapons, an entire ceremonial wagon. Hammurabi brushes a little more soil away. He calls to Woolley at the rim. Woolley comes down. The next year, in another part of the same mound, Woolley will sink a deeper trench. 2.5 meters down through the lower layers, he will pass through a thick stratum of pure clay, barren earth, no pottery, no bone, laid down by an enormous flood somewhere around 3500 BC. He will write up the discovery for the magazine Antiquity in 1930. The title of the article will be 3 words long: The Flood. What George Smith had read on a tablet in London in 1872, Leonard Woolley had now hit with his spade. A man with a Greek accent stands in the great market of Babylon in the afternoon. His name is Herodotus, and he is a traveler from the Aegean coast. He is taking notes for a book. Through an interpreter, he asks the date merchant in front of him about the ancient kings of this land. The merchant names Nebuchadnezzar. He names Nabopolassar. He fumbles a few older names, garbled, half-remembered. He does not say Sumer. He has no word for them. For him, Babylonian history begins with the Babylonians. Herodotus writes it down. When he later sets out the deep past of the world for his Greek readers, that past will begin at Babylon. What lies under Babylon is not yet a question anyone is asking. A man is pulling bricks out of the side of a low hill, about half a day's walk southeast of Baghdad. He is a builder, not a scholar. He needs the bricks for a house he is building for his cousin. The hill is what the local people call a tell. They know, without being told, that there used to be a town here a long time ago. The bricks are good bricks, fired hard, dry, mostly intact, easier to dig out than to make new. Some of them have markings, small wedges, in regular rows. He runs a thumb over them. He has seen them before. He takes them for geometric ornament. He carries the bricks home. The kitchen wall of his cousin's house will be made of bricks with cuneiform on them. None will be turned the right way up. A nobleman from Rome stands in the late afternoon on the ruined platform of Persepolis in southern Persia. His name is Pietro della Valle. He is on a long pilgrimage to the east, 12 years away from Rome. The light is gold across the cracked limestone. On the broken doorways and on the fallen blocks, he sees rows of small wedges arranged in regular columns. He copies them into his notebook exactly as he sees them. He labels them in Italian geometric ornament. He sends his copies back to Europe. They circulate among scholars for decades. The argument is whether these are decorations or writing. Most decide decorations, some kind of patterning of the old Babylonians. It will be almost 200 years before anyone says otherwise. A man in a long apron walks down the stone stairs of a basement under the British Museum, holding a lamp. It is 1850. He is a junior porter, and he has been told to find space. In the basement are 25,000 clay tablets and fragments, packed in wooden crates, stacked floor to ceiling. They came from Nineveh in the 1840s, shipped by Henry Layard. The labels on the crates say Inscribed bricks, origin uncertain. No one in this building can read them. Rawlinson is still on his cliff in Persia, working out the key. The porter sets down his crate on top of another. He goes up the stairs. The crates will sit. For 17 more years, they will sit, until a young apprentice from a printing firm starts coming up from his lunch break to look at them. A man lies on a low bed in a small room on the upper floor of an inn in Aleppo. The window is open. The afternoon is hot. Syrian August, the dry heat that does not soften at sundown. Flies move in the room. He is 36 years old. He has had dysentery for 10 days. He picked it up somewhere on the Euphrates on his way back from Nineveh. His 4th expedition, the 3rd one cut short by fever. His name is George Smith. In London, his wife Mary is waiting with 5 children, none of them older than 10. His youngest is 2. None of them know he is sick. The letter has not reached them. It will not reach them in time. At the bedside, sitting on a wooden chair, is the British consul in Aleppo, John Henderson Skene. He has paper and a pen. He is writing down what Smith says, because Smith may not be able to say much more. Skene has been here since morning. Smith dictates slowly. There are pauses. He stops to swallow. The voice is dry. I have done my duty thoroughly. Skene writes it down. After a while, Smith speaks again. I am willing to do as my God wills. Skene writes that down too. It is the 19th of August, 1876. In the trunk on the floor beside the bed are his field notebooks from the 4th expedition, sketches of tablets he has not yet had time to publish, translations in progress, letters home, a small bag of fragments wrapped in cloth. None of it is finished. He had been working on the Atrahasis fragments, the older Akkadian version of the flood. He had been working on hymns to Inanna, whose author he had not yet identified. He did not know that he was about to read, for the first time anywhere, the name Enheduanna. That work was sitting in the British Museum, waiting for him. He will be buried somewhere outside the city, in a Christian cemetery whose location will be lost in the wars of the 20th century. In London, the British Museum will raise a small subscription for Mary and the children. It will not be enough. They will live the rest of their lives in poverty. The afternoon goes on. The flies move in the room. Skene sets down his pen. What Sumer was then. Sumer was the floodplain between 2 rivers and the people who learned to farm it by managing water in common. Sumer was the first city, Uruk, with its walls of mud brick. Sumer was the first writing system, invented by a man in a courtyard who needed to record 30 sacks of barley and did not know he was changing the species. Sumer was the first written law, the first calendar, the first school, the first named author, Enheduanna, in 2280 BC, putting her own name inside her own poem, the first lament for a fallen city, the first epic, Gilgamesh, the story of a king who could not accept that he would die. Sumer was very small in geography. It was perhaps 100 miles by 100. It lasted as a living civilization perhaps 1,500 years. And after it ended, the cuneiform system it had created went on for another 2,000 years in other people's hands. And then it stopped in 75 AD in one room in Uruk, in a man's right hand that no one was watching. How does this happen? How does the civilization that invented writing of all things become the civilization that no one can read? It happens because writing is not enough. The clay survives, the script does not. To survive, the script needs an unbroken chain of human readers. Fathers teaching sons, teachers teaching students, generation after generation, somewhere on earth, every day. The chain runs through libraries and schools, through state offices and temples, through the simple act of an older scribe sitting next to a younger one. The chain has to be lived. Once it stops, it stops. In 75 AD, it stopped, and clay does not teach itself. The other carriers in this channel's longer story did not die the way George Smith died. Tupaia died in Batavia, going home. Ferdowsi died at home, in Tus, his book finished. Vardan died on his own field at Avarayr. Each of them died carrying something out of his world. Smith died going the other way. The clay was already there. It had been there the whole time. What was missing was the reader, and Smith was going back into the past. Nudasum mustus. Not out of it. He died on a trip towards something that was already, technically, in his own museum. This is the lesson of Sumer. Survival of a civilization through deep time is not only a problem of leaving good material, it is also a problem of someone much later deciding to learn what nobody around them has any reason to learn. We do not know everything. We still do not know where the Sumerians came from. We still do not know exactly what their word for themselves, Sag-Gigga, black-headed, actually meant to them. We still do not know when, precisely, writing was first invented in Uruk. The mystery is real. It has been open for 6,000 years, and it will probably stay open. The 11th tablet of Gilgamesh, catalogued as K.3375, is on display today in room 55 of the British Museum in London. It is behind glass. The lighting is soft. Visitors walk past it. Most do not stop. The man who first read it is not there. He has been gone for 150 years. He is buried in a cemetery somewhere outside Aleppo, in a grave whose location has been lost. The thread was lost, and the world had to learn to read again from the beginning. George Smith read cuneiform in the heart of an empire, at the British Museum, funded by a national newspaper, surrounded by colleagues, listened to by a prime minister. The next person to break a forgotten script will do it under conditions exactly opposite. He will work alone in a cold apartment in a city not long out of a war. He will heat the room with a small electric stove. He will work nights and weekends. He will never travel to the land of the people whose writing he is trying to read. He will see the script only in printed reproductions of codices that he will never touch in person. He will be told by the most respected scholar in the field that what he is doing is impossible. He will be told this for 30 years. He will work anyway, and when he is finally proven right, the civilization he will have brought back is older than Rome, written in glyphs carved into stone in the rainforests of Central America. The Maya. Every empire ends. The thread does not. Subscribe to The Long Thread. The next civilization is being prepared.